Please be seated for the reading of the epistle of this day, the feast of the Most Holy Trinity. The epistle is that of St. Paul to the Romans, chapter 11. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and of the knowledge of God! How incomprehensible are his judgments, and how unsearchable his ways. For who hath known the mind of the Lord? Or who hath been his counselor? Or who hath first given to him, and recompense shall be made him? For of him, and by him, and in him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. These were the words of the gospel. Please, epistle, please stand up for the Holy Gospel. Taken from that of St. Matthew, chapter 28. At that time, Jesus said to his disciples, "All power is given to me in heaven and in earth. Going, therefore, teach ye all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you all days, even to the consummation of the world." These were the words of the gospel. Please be seated. A few announcements today. So we have the new bulletin. Thank you. That has been put out this morning, so for the month of June. So here in Langley, tomorrow Mass at 8, Tuesday 7:15, Wednesday 6 p.m., Thursday, Feast of Corpus Christi, will be 7:15 and 8 a.m. And then on Friday, 7:15, 6 p.m. And on Saturday, I think there is a mistake here. So I don't have a pen with, yes, there is a pen here. So Saturday it says 6 p.m., but obviously that is not right. So it's going to be 9 a.m. as usual. So when you read the bulletin, make sure that basically it's the same schedule as normal. Father is coming back tomorrow, so we're going to have the 2 masses starting on Tuesday, so on. You have it in the vestibule as well. There will be children catechism and apologetic class after Mass today. Those are very important. There will be a second collection today for the building fund. The kitchen fund is empty. Donations are welcome. Please see Kathy Berger after Mass. Thank you for your continued support. Yes, so that's so that you can have coffee and muffins and toasts after Mass. So, okay, another thing, yes. So, today we are going to talk a little bit about actuality, what is going on with the society. You know, we had Father Wegner's letter a couple of weeks ago talking about different letters he had received, some who are afraid of an agreement, some who are for an agreement with Rome. And so he summarized a little bit the different positions, but at the end basically he says we have to trust Bishop Foley, and we have to try not to be excited about all these things and worried and have fighting with each other. That was 2 weeks ago. But obviously, the internet is a kind of a system that doesn't stop because a priest said so. I don't know if there is any power apart from God who could stop the internet, really. So, I told you many times I hate the internet, but sometimes there are things that you have to look up. And anyway, so the internet chatting and stuff has not stopped. The news on the internet, they have not stopped either. And many people still have questions, what's going on, Father, and I receive all kind of emails and all that. So what about these letters from the three, Bishop Williamson, Bishop Galareta, Bishop Pissier, in April? It's on the internet. You know, they are against the practical agreement. What about the answer of Bishop Foley? It's on the internet too. What about the interview of Bishop Foley to the CNS, the Catholic News Service, which is a news service from the U.S. bishops? So they went to Menzingen. And in this interview he says that he unfortunately kind of cannot exclude the possibility that there could be a split in the society if there is purely practical agreement with Rome. So what about that? What about those sermons that we see on the internet that we have listened to or heard about? Father Joe Pfeiffer, Father Chazal in Asia, who preach strongly against such an agreement, and now they have been ordered not to talk anymore or preach. What about Father Rostand, who forbade them to say Mass in the society chapels in the United States and to preach in the United States when they come for vacation this summer? What about that, Father? What about that? We see this, we see that. There is problem. What about that list of priests who have been expelled from the society? Father, 6 were expelled, and 5 more are in danger of expulsion. So Father, what should we do? So yes, those news are troubling. It is true. There is, and we cannot say the contrary. The reality is that there is a crisis in the society. Should we be surprised? There is even a bigger crisis in the Catholic Church. So, I mean, you know, so therefore it's normal that there is a crisis in the society. The society is composed of human beings. Everybody wants to do what's right, but they don't always have the same opinion about what's right and what's not right. In families, we have crises too. So should we be scandalized about the fact that there are different opinions? No, it's just normal. So let's calm down. Let's calm down. We have all these news. I didn't tell you all the news. That's all I can remember for now. The internet is full of news. And I know that many of you are much more skilled than me. And I still don't like the internet, but sometimes if people send me stuff, sometime I will check. So I don't know everything. One thing I know is that there is a lot of fuss about an agreement with Rome, but one fact is that as of today, there is no agreement with Rome. Nothing has been signed, and we don't even know what that text would be. So, why should we fuss? Why should we fight? You see what I mean? So, but Father, okay, that's nice. That's like what basically what you say is the same thing than Father Wexner's letter. Yes, in a way, is true, because we need to keep calm and we need to pray, make sacrifices, and not fight with each other, because right as of now there is nothing to fight about. There is no agreement. We don't know what this would be, so what's the point? It's more like a theory fight if you don't have nothing concrete to discuss. But what can we do? What can we do to best implement the line of the society today, which is the same? There was letters from the district superiors that I've read from France, from Germany, United States, Canada, and Asia. And all the district superiors agree that we should keep quiet, trust Bishop Fillet, and trust the Holy Providence of God, and so forth, so on. But other than that, what could we do to try to achieve this peace that our superiors ask us to keep? So I decided that, if there are some signs of division today, we should go back to the time when there was no such division. We should go back to the official doctrine of the society, which is still good today. Whatever you see on the internet, the official doctrine of the society is summarized. You have it in many books. From Archbishop Lefebvre, they have uncrowned him, open letter to confused Catholics. I accuse the Council, very, very good books that we sell. But the best is here. The best that I know of, summary of the Society's doctrine, is called the Catechism of the Crisis in the Church. So it was written by Father Matthias Gaudron, a French, so sometimes they do something good. So for a year or so it was only in French, and here I have a commentary from His Excellency Bishop Fillet about this book. When it came out in French, he said, quote, "I absolutely wish that this book is made available to the English-speaking countries." So his wish is that he absolutely wished has been implemented a year later, and now you have it in good old plain English. And I just received this catalog of the Angelus Press, and it is there, and you can order it, $16.95. That's pretty good. And moreover, I've been given this morning. For this month of June, there is a special offer. If you purchase any item in the bookstore, you will be entered in a draw to win a $25 gift certificate. The draw will be held on Sunday, July the 1st. I have already ordered a few copies a week or 10 days ago. I asked Mrs. Filiato to order 5 more copies, but I think the best way for you, and I do think that in this time of crisis and confusion, I firmly believe each household should have a copy, and each member of the household should read this book, because we are not anymore in the 50s, in the time where we could be satisfied with doing holy hour here and there, and doing the rosary here and there, and reading a chapter of the Bible after every confession or so. That's not enough anymore. There is an obligation, a moral obligation for Catholics today to know about what's going on and the errors, the modern errors. Because those modern errors are sometimes subtle, and they are hidden sometimes in a cover of tradition, so-called. So it's exactly what St. Pius X said about modernist books. One page you read, oh my God, this is really traditional. And you turn the other page and you have the submarine trying to torpedo the Catholic ship. Okay, it's very subtle, but in this book represents, in fact, a summary of all the other books that have been written against the modern errors. So that's why you need to know these things. You absolutely need to know these things. Because with the confusion of today, even the good priests may forget about these things. Maybe they have not read that book. I will make a confession. I had not read it too until these troubles started. But let me give you a few of the teachings that you can find in the book. It's just a few. But you will see how much they really explain, and how much they can give you peace of mind by knowing the truth. The peace comes with the truth. So I will go a bit quickly. I took some quotes from different parts. One here about the revolution. Can it be said that Vatican II was a revolution in the Church? Answer. Some of its own defenders themselves proclaim loud and clear that the Council was a revolution in the Church. For instance, Cardinal Suenens, he was from Belgium, made a parallel between the Council and the French Revolution. I hope you know about the French Revolution. That's when they killed the kings and persecuted the Church in the name of liberty, equality, fraternity. It was that's what brought about the great change in our societies. They said that Vatican II, he said Vatican II was 789, that's the date of the French Revolution. Vatican II was 1789 in the Church. Cardinal Suenens. So we had our French Revolution in the Church. Father Yves Congar, a conciliar theologian, one who has influenced a lot the different texts that we find now in Vatican II. What did he say? He compared the Council to the Bolshevik Revolution, the Communist Revolution in Russia, which happened in October 1917. He says, quote, "The Church has peacefully undergone its October Revolution." Those are main actors in the Council. But there's many more quotes, but I'm going faster. So we are going to see three of these errors of the Council. One of them is collegiality. The principle of episcopal collegiality rises in opposition to the exercise of authority. The Pope and the bishops must no longer use their power, but they must direct the Church collegially or collectively. The idea of equality propagated by the French Revolution has been imposed. It is based upon the false notion of Rousseau. Rousseau is a very bad French philosopher who had very bad ideas, and he paved the way to the French Revolution. Rousseau, which denied the existence of an authority willed by God and attributed all power to the people. This theory is contrary to the teaching of the Holy Scripture, as said St. Paul in the Romans chapter 13. Quote, "Let every soul be subject to higher powers, for there is no power but from God, and those that are ordained of God." So you have that first error, where the Pope is not anymore the supreme power, and the bishop in their own diocese are not anymore the supreme power. That now they have to consult with everybody. They have to have the agreement. And one thing that we find in all the council is the spirit of progress of the modern world, that we have to basically conform to the modern world. So we read in section 12 on the chapter Gaudium et Spes, quote, "According to the almost unanimous opinion of believers and unbelievers alike, all things on earth should be related to man as their center and crown." That's a text of the council. I don't think we can. There is no way to interpret that in a traditional manner. This is clearly against God. And so, therefore, Christians are exhorted to work with all men in the building of a more human world. This is exact communist theory, to build a paradise on earth. In the final analysis, what judgment can be made of this document? Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, when he was a cardinal, called this document a counter-syllabus. What does that mean? That refers to a document of Pope Pius IX called the syllabus. That means a collection, a syllabus of modern errors. So Pope Pius IX collected the modern errors that were spread in his days, in 1850s already, and analyzed them and condemned them. And now Cardinal Ratzinger said that this document of Vatican II, Gaudium et Spes, is a counter-syllabus. And that's true, he was right. This Vatican II document, in effect, positively affirms what Pius IX denied and condemned. In the Catalogue of Contemporary Errors, he established in 1864. Second question, did Cardinal Ratzinger explain why he described Gaudium et Spes as a counter-syllabus? The Cardinal justified his analogy by explaining that in the 1960s, the Church appropriated, that means made her own, quote, the best values of 2 centuries of liberal culture. Values which, he said, quote, originate outside the Church, unquote. But now they have found a place within it. A counter-syllabus. What had been condemned by Pius IX has been now integrated in the church. What about religious liberty? So in the preceding pages of the book, they explain what it is and who condemned it, how many popes condemned it. There was 4 waves, 4 moments, 4 different historical moments where they tried to come back against the church and try to influence the church, and the popes always condemned them every time. So the next question was, does the religious liberty proclaimed by Vatican II incur these condemnations of the preceding popes of liberal Catholicism? The religious liberty taught by Vatican II incurs several of these condemnations. In Quanta Cura, little problem. In Quanta Cura, for example, Blessed Pius IX condemned, quote, that erroneous opinion, most fatal in its effects on the Catholic Church and the salvation of souls, called by our predecessor Gregory XVI an insanity, namely that liberty of conscience and worship is each man's personal right, which ought to be legally proclaimed and asserted in every rightly constituted society. He equally condemned the following error as contrary to Holy Scripture, contrary to the Church, contrary to the Holy Fathers. Quote, that is the best condition of civil society in which no duty is recognized, as attached to the civil power of restraining by enacted penalties offenders against the Catholic religion, except so far as public peace may require. So this is contrary to the true doctrine on religious freedom that the Church had. The Church says you cannot force somebody to convert. Conversion has to be free. But error does not have any rights in civil societies. The rulers of the civil society have a duty to protect the Catholic Church, to protect the truth, and to limit it as far as they can, without creating a civil disturbance, to limit the exercise of error. Why? Because, and you see that with all those Jehovah's Witnesses and everybody who knocks at your door, you know, and asking you if you are saved and these kind of things. Unfortunately, there's many people who will listen to these false teachers of false doctrine. That's why normally in a Catholic society, they should be restricted in the exercise of propagating their errors, because if you don't have the Catholic faith, you cannot be saved. And this is the big difference with the modern church today. Because today, they say that you can be saved outside. That's basically the main, that summarizes the Council of Vatican II. Now, what about, so a quote here about Pope Pius XII. He said, the quote, the Catholic Church, as we have already said, is a perfect society and has its foundation the truth of faith, infallibly revealed by God. For this reason, that which is opposed to the truth is necessarily an error. And the same rights which are objectively recognized for truth cannot be afforded to error. Otherwise, you put the two on the same foot. Do the authors of Dignitatis Humanae, the document of the religious liberty, do the authors of this document admit that their document contradicts the teachings of previous popes? Several of the authors of Dignitatis Humanae were obliged to admit that the text posed some difficulties. The chief inspirer of the text, Father John Courtney Murray, an American, acknowledged this in his commentary, quote, almost exactly a century later, so remember that the syllabus came 1864 and the council 100 years later, the Declaration on Religious Freedom seems to affirm as a Catholic teaching that which Gregory XVI and Pius IX held as an insanity, as a mad idea. So now the council teaches that which was condemned. Father Yves Congar admitted, quote, it cannot be denied that the Declaration on Religious Liberty does say materially something else than the syllabus of 1864. It even says just about the opposite of propositions 15 and 17 to 79 of this document. Ecumenism. So we know all about ecumenism. Assisi 3, Assisi 2, Assisi 1, the visits to the synagogues, the visit in 2006 to the Mosque of Istanbul, where the Pope took his shoes off and bowed and prayed towards Mecca. So we don't know if he prayed or if he just remained silent, but it looks like he was praying. Probably was not. I hope he was not praying. But to the onlookers, it looked as if he was praying in a mosque. And so forth, so on. There's so many things. So ecumenism, that means that yes, we have to be, we have to recognize that outside of the church, basically there are other structures, other religions, and they each have some element of truth, and therefore you can be saved. If you are a good Muslim, if you are a good Jew, if you are a good atheist, if you are sincere in being an atheist, and as long as you are a human being, because Christ was a human being, now you could be saved. How did Pius XI judge these ecumenical activities, which in his days were not as bad as today? Imagine what he would say today. Quote, now such efforts can meet with no kind of approval among Catholics. They presuppose the erroneous view that all religions are more or less good and praiseworthy, inasmuch as all give expression under various forms to that innate sense which leads men to God and to the obedient acknowledgement of his rule. Those who hold such a view are not only in error, they distort the true idea of religion and thus reject it, falling gradually into naturalism and atheism. That's where it leads. Because finally, you have to be logical. If all religions can save, then no religion is true. Because they have the idea of God, the philosophical idea of God, as even a Greek philosopher, Aristotle, understood this, the idea of God implies that there can be only one, because the idea of God is that he is the supreme being and he is the first cause of everything. And therefore there cannot be another cause beside. How does the Pope conclude? I hope they would have read that in the council. Quote, to favor this opinion, therefore, and to encourage such undertakings is tantamount to abandoning the religion revealed by God. So I gave you a few quotes to show you that these documents on collegiality, ecumenism, religious liberty, and also adaptation to the modern world, those are erroneous in themselves. They are not only ambiguous. Ambiguous means, well, you could interpret it in a progressive way or you could interpret it in a traditional way. And so here a question, should all the Vatican II documents be rejected? Answer, the documents of Vatican II can be divided in 3 groups. See, so we don't reject all of it. Some are acceptable because they are in conformity with Catholic doctrine, as for example the decree on the formation of priests. I read it, that's not a bad document. So we can accept a few, maybe 1 or 2, but anyways. Second group, others are equivocal, ambiguous. So that's the ones I told you. They could be interpreted one way or the other. So there's lots of that in the Vatican II. Third group, some cannot be understood in an orthodox way, that is to say, in the correct Catholic way. In their present formulation, they are unacceptable. That is the case for the Declaration on Religious Liberty. It's very clear. We cannot accept this document. This is not an equivocal document. This is an ambiguous document. This is an erroneous, plain and simple document. The text of the third group, the one group of really bad documents like religious liberty, ecumenism, and all that, those that I talked to you about. The text of the third group cannot be accepted until they have been rectified. So if the Pope were to tell us, let's interpret Vatican II, the documents of Vatican II, let's interpret it in the light of tradition. We could say, well, those in the second group, okay, but there are 4 of them that we cannot accept unless they are corrected. So to say that we could interpret the Council in the light of tradition is an error if we don't make that distinction between group number 2 and group number 3. What about tradition? What do they say? Because they all said that. Paul VI said, oh, let's interpret in tradition. John Paul II, let's interpret in tradition. Benedict said, let's interpret in tradition. What do they mean by tradition? Now, that's another problem. So as I said, the first problem is that some of these documents in group 3, we cannot even interpret them in tradition. They are erroneous, plain and simple. But the second problem is, what do they mean by tradition? Where does, because they have now the expression living tradition. Where does the expression living tradition used against the traditionalists nowadays come from? The expression living tradition comes from a document of Vatican II. Oh, big surprise. Called Dei Verbum. And it mentions evolving tradition. Oh, so they don't have the same meaning than we do. So, from the modernist viewpoint, the role of the magisterium, that is the teaching of the church, is not to safeguard the deposit of revelation. That's directly contrary against St. Paul. To transmit what we have received, to safeguard against errors. No, not for them, that's too static. That's not living anymore. For them, tradition is living and his role is to ensure ecclesial communion. Oh. Ecclesial communion in space and time. Other question, is this new notion of living tradition to be found in the teaching of Benedict XVI? The notion of living tradition is omnipresent, is everywhere in Pope Benedict XVI teachings. He explains, tradition, quote, is the communion of the faithful around their legitimate pastors, down through history, a communion that the Holy Spirit nurtures, assuring the connection between the experience of the apostolic faith lived in the original community of the disciples and the actual experience of Christ in the church. So tradition is not anymore a teaching, it's an experience. And this is pure Protestantism. Religion is what you feel. Religion is what makes you feel is right, feel is good. You have this experience. So basically for him, tradition is simply a series of experiences. There's another quote. What is notable in this definition of tradition? Under the pretext of emphasizing the living character of tradition, the essential content of this tradition is left aside. And what is that content? It's the revealed truth which is immutable. So the revealed truth is left aside. And what does he compare tradition to? Quote from Benedict XVI. Tradition is the living river that links us to the origins, the living river in which the origins are ever present. There's that question of flow, of change. Okay, so now we see the different, there's many more errors, okay? You will see, that you can read that, it's like a novel. You know, you read that, it's hard to put it down, okay? They talk to you about all the other changes, and for example, the change they made in the book of exorcisms. The old Father Amor, who is the chief exorcist of the Diocese of Rome, says, the new ritual of exorcism doesn't work. We tried it. They cannot anymore expel the devil with this new ritual. So they are disobeying Rome, and they use the old. Because with the old, they expel the devils. With the new, they can't. Because they took the good prayers away. Why would you do that? Why would you make that new form of exorcism? And especially make it in such a way that it doesn't work. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason. So, question. Wouldn't it have been possible to continue to go along with Rome? Answer. Simple common sense shows and experience confirms that it is currently impossible to fully live and defend the Catholic faith while being approved by Conciliar Rome. Following upon the Episcopal Consecration of 1988, Rome considered the celebration of the former liturgy to a few communities. But in return, they were obliged to recognize the new Mass and to refrain from any criticism of Vatican II. Other question. We had a victory in 1988 because tradition survived. You remember it was called the Operation Survival. If the victory was won, because we say we had that victory in 88, what prevents the society from being reconciled with the Roman authorities today? Answer. The consecration of 1988 contributed to saving Catholic tradition, not only by assuring the transmission of the sacrament of holy orders, and thus of the traditional Mass and sacraments, but also by protecting a small part of the Church's flock against the conciliar errors. Now, these conciliar errors continue to ravage the Church, and they reign even at Rome. To continue to be protected against them effectively, it is therefore necessary to keep a distance from the Roman authorities. The definitive victory is yet to come. So, the purpose of staying away is that, now I repeat, these conciliar errors continue to ravage the Church, and they reign even at Rome. To continue to be protected against them effectively, it is therefore necessary to keep a distance from the Roman authorities. It's in this book, recommended by His Excellency Bishop Fellet. Other question. Wouldn't it be possible to continue resisting the conciliar errors without being outside the normal chain of command of legitimate church authorities? Wouldn't that be possible? Maybe we could be recognized and maybe we could continue to fight errors. What's the answer the Society of St. Pius X gives to that question? Quote, during an epidemic, the most basic prudence imposes the strict separation of the sick from the healthy. The same holds for the situation today. It is impossible to frequent the conciliar authorities on a regular basis without exposing oneself to contracting their errors. The example of the Ecclesia Dei communities furnishes the striking proof. We cannot have a frequent contact with the conciliar authorities as they are now, because they are not converted and because they continue to promote the council. We cannot engage in frequent contact without catching the errors. And it is true, and here you get the book and you will see all the, they name all the communities that were recognized and that finally failed. So I'll give you only one example, a striking one example. Right after, actually, we think it was almost the same day, because Father Girouard, I know him, I was there at the time. He came to Écône for the consecration, and when it was over, he left and he signed with Rome. In July 88, Le Barou, that's the name of the monastery. I know, I saw it being built. Traditional monastery. We were so proud of these guys. Up in the mountain, Mont Ventoux. I went there, it was cold, they built it, and everybody supported them. There were big donations and people coming every year to help them build, giving their times for free and so forth, so on. And then in 88, he went to sign with Rome, but he didn't sign anything. See, look at that. Le Barou publicly imposed a condition. They said to Rome, we will sign, but, quote, the condition is that no doctrinal or liturgical counterpart be required of us, and that silence not be imposed on our anti-modernist preaching. You will not oblige us to accept these errors of the council. You will not oblige us to accept the new Mass or say the new Mass, and you will not oblige us to stop to preach. You will not oblige us to stop to preach against those errors. Rome says, no problem. Hey, wow, that's great. No problem. That was in July. But by the following October, one monk has observed, quote, a certain relativizing of the critique of the document on religious liberty and a critique of the meeting of Assisi within the Abbey. In fact, Le Barou was even to go so far as to try to justify the errors of Vatican II publicly. In the bottom of the page, there's a quote. There's a monk who wrote a book of 2,960 pages trying to show that those documents of Vatican II could be interpreted in tradition. 3,000 pages to show that. But another monk studied his book, and he saw that, in fact, this book radically falsified the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas on law. Le Barou. They got all the arguments, they got all the conditions, and moreover, in 1995, 7 years after he got all those agreements, he concelebrated the new Mass with the Pope. Bishop Rifan also concelebrated the new Mass, Bishop Rifan on campus. The Fraternity of St. Peter, they have to accept the principle of concelebrating the new Mass with the Bishop of the diocese on Maundy Thursday. But surely the ecclesiastic communities, at least they gain a wider kind of field of apostolate. Maybe now that they have been recognized, maybe they can work more for tradition. Answer. The situation varies quite a bit from country to country, and in France from diocese to diocese, but most of the bishops restrict the activities of the ecclesiastic communities. Even those bishops who are not too hostile towards them hesitate to welcome them, since they fear the reactions of their clergy and their activist laity. Rome, for its part, fears the reactions of the bishop. That's again collegiality. They are not masters anymore. They need to have the consensus. You see how that era of Vatican II does not even enable a conservative bishop to give full liberty to those communities. Finally, what does this situation reveal? The situation of the ecclesiastic communities, which are gradually being constrained to abandon traditional doctrine, yet which are only accepted in various dioceses with many restrictions, clearly confirms the existence of the state of necessity invoked by Archbishop Lefebvre. Now, as then, for those who desire to defend the Catholic faith to the bitter end, it is impossible to place themselves in the hands of authorities who contradict or relativize the Catholic faith. We cannot put ourselves now as them. That's not me talking, it's not me. You cannot say Father Girouard is against an agreement. I'm just promoting a book from the society. It's not me, it's the book of the society which is for sale. And that's in the Angelus catalog today. So I'm just promoting. They should be happy. They should reward me. They should say, Father Girouard, we're going to give you 1% of all the profits that come from the sales. You did a marvelous job. I wish all the priests and all the parishes would sell so many of these books. So I'm not talking against an argument, I'm just reading the question and answer. Let me repeat the last one. Now, as then, like 88, for those who desire to defend the Catholic faith to the bitter end, it is impossible to place themselves in the hands of authorities who contradict or relativize the Catholic faith. It's just logical. So anyway, so that's what this book says. Very good book, as I said. I encourage you to buy it. And I will finish here with a quote about Catholic action. Because unfortunately, it seems sometimes that the faithful think that only the priests have to fight. Only the priests have the duty to defend the church and fight against the errors. This is an error in itself. I have an old book, I showed it at the men's meeting last week. Thick like this, of quotes from the popes, starting from 1750 up to before the council, okay, 1960. All the popes saying, the faithful have to learn the doctrine, they have to fight against errors, they have to band together, they have to participate in groups so as to influence the people around them. Because the priest cannot go everywhere. There are many more places when you, the faithful, can go and reach other people around you where I cannot do it. It is a duty that you learn about these errors, not only to be preserved, but also to help in the fight. And that's how our movement started. If you have studied this movement, this Catholic traditional movement, you will see that it is not Archbishop Lefebvre who placed an advertisement in the papers and said, oh, you know what? We are going to open a mass center, traditional mass center, here in Switzerland or whatever. All those who like it, come. That's not how it worked. He started the seminary, and he started ordaining priests, and he started preaching against these errors. And he taught those priests against these errors. And what happened? He received demands from the faithful. Father, we are a little group here. We meet to say the rosary. We are against the modern errors. We want the old mass. Send us our priests. Send us some real priests. And the Archbishop would send one. It always was like that. Groups of Catholics who had studied these errors and understood that those were errors and started to fight against them, and then they collected together and they asked for a priest. That's always how it worked. And it's all it will continue to be. If, God forbid, we don't know. I'm not a prophet. We have absolutely no, we cannot know. If, God forbid, one day the society repudiates this book, you will have the duty to quit in conscience. But if you have not read it, you will not know why. St. Paul himself, the great apostle, said, even if there is an angel from heaven that would come and teach you anything that is contrary to what I taught you, do not receive him. Even if I myself, he said, even if I myself or even an angel would teach the contrary to what I taught you before, don't receive me. That's an error. So the society for 50 years has fought against errors. And this is the summary of the fight. And this is still, the society still sells this book, as I told you. But if suppose in 10 years, for some kind of confusion or something, somebody from the society comes on this pulpit and says, you know what, finally, religious liberty is not really that bad. In fact, it has a very, very limited sense. Okay, so we never really understood this document. Or we could interpret the documents of Vatican II in a traditional manner. That is wrong. So if he comes, you have to tell him, you have to be very respectful. I'm very sorry, Father. Or if it's a bishop, Your Excellency, give the proper title to everybody. I'm very sorry, but this is wrong. And I know it's wrong because I read it in your book. And if necessary, you have to stop. If this preaching continues, you have to stop going because you want to save your souls. And because you don't want to give a hand to modernist authorities. If they convert, if they correct those documents now, we are in another circumstance. But if they don't change, here the answer I just told you many times, we would catch their disease. As happened to all these other communities like Le Barou. So let us, my dear friend, reflect on this. And you've got to read this. You've got to read this book. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.